Imagine a sunny day at your local park, a haven of joy where families gather, children laugh, and serenity fills the air. It's a place where life feels lighter, where troubles seem distant, and where community thrives. You'd never expect this tranquility to be shattered, would you? Yet, life has a way of testing our strength and humanity in the most unexpected moments. This story takes us to one such park on a morning like any other. The golden sunlight filters through the trees. Laughter echoes in the air, and the world seems at peace. But beneath the calm surface, an encounter unfolds, one that reminds us of the power of courage, kindness, and standing tall in the face of prejudice. As we explore this heartfelt story, you'll meet Alia, a young girl whose infectious spirit lights up every corner she touches, and her father, Marcus, a quiet pillar of strength and love. Together, they'll show us what it means to confront ignorance with grace and turn adversity into a lesson for all. Before we dive into this compelling journey, I invite you to take a moment to like, subscribe, and share this video. Stories like these remind us of what truly matters and how a simple act of courage can inspire change in ways we never imagined. Let's spread this message far and wide, because every story of strength and resilience has the power to change the world. It was a picture-perfect morning at the local park, the kind that feels pulled straight from a postcard. The golden sunlight streamed through the leafy canopy, casting playful shadows on the paths. Birds chirped in harmony, blending seamlessly with the hum of the park's life. Children's laughter, the rhythmic thuds of joggers' sneakers, and the distant bark of an enthusiastic dog. Amidst this vibrant tableau was Alia, a young girl with an infectious spirit and a smile that could rival the sun. She sat comfortably in her purple wheelchair, decorated with colorful butterflies and stars that sparkled in the light. Beneath the shade of an old oak tree, Alia's laughter rang out as she played with her favorite art supplies, sketching a world filled with colors, dreams, and endless possibilities. Not far away, her father, Marcus, kept a watchful eye on her. Dressed in a casual button-up shirt and jeans, Marcus exuded a quiet strength. A cup of coffee in hand, he observed the scene with a contented smile, cherishing the moments of joy that Alia brought into his life. For Marcus, the park was more than just a weekend retreat. It was a place where his daughter's vibrant personality could shine without limits. The other park visitors were a mix of families, couples, and solo adventurers. A group of kids raced each other on bikes, their cheers echoing in the distance. Nearby, a couple spread out a picnic blanket, their toddler toddling around with gleeful curiosity. The atmosphere was one of harmony, a collective rhythm that brought people together, regardless of their differences. But this serene setting wasn't without its undercurrents. People occasionally glanced at Alia, their expressions ranging from admiration for her radiant joy to fleeting moments of pity. Marcus noticed, as he always did, but he brushed it off. He had long accepted that his daughter's wheelchair often drew attention. What mattered was Alia's happiness, and in that moment, she was glowing. Unbeknownst to them, the day held a challenge they didn't see coming. As the sun climbed higher and the park grew busier, a figure emerged from the other side of the park. Ethan was a man whose demeanor starkly contrasted with the park's cheerful ambience. His stiff posture and furrowed brow hinted at a man weighed down by life's bitterness. Ethan's eyes scanned the park, his restless energy seeking an outlet. It didn't take long for his gaze to land on Alia. The sight of her carefree laughter seemed to spark something unsettling within him, something dark and unkind. He stopped in his tracks, watching her with a look that Marcus instantly recognized. It was a mix of disdain and misplaced superiority, the kind that often preceded uncomfortable encounters. The park's harmony was about to be disrupted, but neither Marcus nor Alia could have predicted just how deeply the events of this day would resonate. In those fleeting moments before the storm arrived, the world seemed frozen in time. Alia giggled as she held up a colorful drawing of the park, her butterflies and stars mirroring the joy she felt within. Marcus took another sip of coffee, his eyes filled with pride as he watched her. For a brief second, everything felt perfect, but life has a way of testing us when we least expect it. And the serene calm of that morning would soon give way to an emotional storm that would challenge not only Marcus and Alia, but everyone who bore witness to what was about to unfold. Ethan's footsteps were deliberate as he crossed the park, each step a crescendo building toward the inevitable clash. His eyes, hardened by years of bitterness, locked onto Alia and her wheelchair. Something about her carefree joy, her defiance of what he saw as a life of limitations, fueled the resentment simmering within him. Perhaps it was his own failures, the weight of disappointments he could never seem to escape, that demanded an outlet, whatever the cause. Alia, innocent and unaware, became his target. He stopped a few feet away from the old oak tree, his shadow stretching across the ground toward Alia. Marcus, sensing a shift in the atmosphere, immediately set down his coffee and rose to his feet. His instincts had been honed through years of protecting his daughter, and the tension radiating from Ethan was impossible to ignore. "What are you doing here?" Ethan's voice cut through the park's idyllic serenity like a jagged shard of glass. His tone was sharp, his words heavy with an authority that no one had granted him. Alia, startled by the sudden intrusion, looked up from her drawing. Her wide, curious eyes met Ethan's glare, and for a moment, she was too surprised to respond. Marcus, however, wasted no time stepping between Ethan and his daughter. "Excuse me?" Marcus's voice was calm but firm, a quiet warning etched into his tone. He positioned himself protectively, his broad shoulders shielding Alia from Ethan's imposing presence. Ethan ignored Marcus, his gaze fixed on Alia. "Kids like you shouldn't be here," he spat, his words dripping with malice. "This park isn't a place for distractions." The words hung in the air, their weight sinking into the ears of those nearby. A few passers-by slowed their steps, their attention drawn to the unfolding confrontation. Whispers began to ripple through the crowd as people exchanged uneasy glances, unsure whether to intervene or keep their distance. Alia's lips trembled, but she didn't cry. She clutched her sketchpad tightly, her knuckles white, and looked to her father for reassurance. Marcus turned his head slightly, giving her a look that spoke volumes. "You're safe. I've got this." "What exactly do you mean by that?" Marcus asked, his voice still level but now carrying a steely edge. "She has as much right to be here as anyone else." Ethan's face twisted into a sneer. "You think it's fair to make the rest of us uncomfortable?" he shot back. "Dragging her out here," he gestured vaguely at the wheelchair, his contempt evident. "She's just in the way." The crowd had grown larger now, people inching closer as their curiosity and concern got the better of them. A few had their phones out, recording the scene. The whispers had turned to murmurs, some voices expressing outrage, others disbelief. Marcus took a step closer to Ethan, his posture radiating calm authority. "Let me make something clear," he said, his voice low but powerful. "My daughter is not in the way. She's living her life, just like everyone else here. If that makes you uncomfortable, that's your problem, not hers." Ethan opened his mouth to retort, but Marcus held up a hand, cutting him off. "No, you're going to listen now," Marcus said, his tone brooking no argument. "You don't get to come here and project your bitterness onto a child. You don't get to diminish her spirit because you're too small to handle your own shortcomings." A ripple of applause broke out from the crowd, scattered at first but quickly growing louder. Ethan's confidence faltered, his bravado cracking under the weight of the public's judgment. He glanced around, his eyes darting from one disapproving face to another. "You think you're strong?" Marcus continued, stepping even closer to Ethan. "Strength isn't tearing others down. Strength is lifting them up, facing challenges with grace and dignity. My daughter shows more strength every day than you'll ever know." Alia's eyes shone with tears, but they weren't tears of sadness. She looked at her father with a mixture of awe and pride, her small frame seeming to grow taller with each word he spoke. In that moment, she felt invincible. Ethan's face turned red, a mixture of anger, embarrassment, and something else, shame. The crowd's murmurs grew louder, their collective judgment pressing down on him. His bluster was gone, replaced by a sullen, almost defeated demeanor. "You owe her an apology," Marcus said, his voice unwavering. It wasn't a request, it was a demand. Ethan hesitated, his jaw tightening. For a moment, it seemed he might refuse, but the weight of the crowd's eyes, the cameras recording every second, and Marcus's unrelenting gaze finally broke him. I'm sorry, Ethan muttered, barely loud enough to be heard. Alia looked at him, her expression a mixture of caution and compassion. After a long pause, she spoke softly but clearly. I forgive you. Her words hung in the air, their simplicity carrying a profound weight. The crowd fell silent, the tension giving way to an almost reverent quiet. Ethan looked at her, startled, as if her forgiveness was the last thing he expected. Then, without another word, he turned and walked away. His shoulders slumped. The storm had passed, but its impact lingered. Marcus knelt beside Alia, his hand resting gently on her shoulder. Are you okay? He asked, his voice filled with concern. She nodded, a small smile breaking through her tears. You were amazing, Dad. He smiled back, his own eyes glistening. So were you, Butterfly. As the crowd began to disperse, a sense of solidarity lingered in the air. People approached Marcus and Alia, offering words of support and admiration. Strangers became allies, united by the powerful lesson they had just witnessed. Marcus and Alia's bond had not only weathered the storm, it had inspired everyone who had the privilege to see it firsthand. The moment Ethan's cruel words pierced the air, Marcus's protective instincts flared like a storm breaking over the horizon. His daughter, Alia, sat frozen in her wheelchair, her normally vibrant spirit momentarily dulled by the venom of Ethan's prejudice. But Marcus knew this wasn't the time for retreat. It was a time to stand tall, not only for his daughter, but for every pair of eyes watching this injustice unfold. Marcus rose from the bench, his movements deliberate yet unthreatening. His tall frame cast a shadow that stretched over Alia, a symbolic shield against the hateful storm. That's enough, he said, his voice steady, firm, and filled with a quiet authority that demanded attention. The park, once bustling with the lively chatter of families, seemed to pause as if holding its breath for what would come next. Ethan turned to face Marcus, his anger flickering between defiance and unease. What's your problem? Ethan barked, attempting to regain the dominance he thought he wielded. Marcus didn't flinch. Instead, he stepped closer, his calm demeanor belying the fire burning within him. My problem? My problem is people like you, who think tearing others down makes you strong. Strength isn't in bullying a child or spewing hatred. Strength is in building others up, especially when life's challenges weigh them down. Ethan opened his mouth to retort, but Marcus held up a hand, silencing him with the weight of his words. You see my daughter? Every day, she faces challenges you couldn't imagine, and yet she smiles, she laughs, and she inspires. That wheelchair doesn't define her. Her courage, her joy, and her resilience do. What defines you, Ethan? The crowd that had begun to gather murmured in agreement, their whispers a tide turning against Ethan. Phones were raised, capturing every word, every emotion etched on Marcus's face. You think you're making a point here today, Marcus continued, his voice unwavering. But all you're showing is how small a person can become when they let bitterness rule their heart. Look around you. Look at these people. What do you think they see? A man tearing down a child, or a man whose own pain has made him blind to his actions? Ethan's bravado began to crumble under the weight of Marcus's words. His shoulders slumped, his eyes darting to the growing crowd, searching for a way out. But Marcus wasn't finished. He wasn't here to simply win an argument. He was here to teach a lesson, one that would resonate far beyond this single moment. You owe her an apology, Marcus said, his tone leaving no room for debate. Ethan hesitated, his face a mixture of anger and humiliation. His lips pressed into a thin line before he muttered, I'm sorry. The apology was half-hearted, but it was a start. Marcus nodded, acknowledging the effort, however small. Alia, he said, turning to his daughter, his voice softening. Do you have something you want to say? Alia looked up, her eyes glistening but no longer with tears of sadness, with a wisdom beyond her years. She said, I forgive you. Her voice was steady, carrying a strength that belied her young age. The crowd fell silent, moved by the simplicity yet profundity of her words. For a moment, time seemed to stand still. The tension in the air dissipated, replaced by an almost palpable sense of collective reflection. Ethan's face softened, the anger and bitterness giving way to something resembling remorse. He nodded curtly before turning and walking away, his departure marked by a wave of whispers among the onlookers. Marcus knelt beside Alia, placing a hand gently on her shoulder. "You were so brave," he said, his voice filled with pride. "So were you, Daddy," she replied, a small smile breaking through the clouds of the morning's events. As the crowd began to disperse, several strangers approached Marcus and Alia, offering words of encouragement and admiration. A young mother with a stroller said, "Thank you for standing up. My son's too young to understand, but I'll tell him this story one day." Another man added, "We need more people like you in this world." Marcus nodded humbly, his focus entirely on Alia. To him, the accolades weren't important. What mattered was that his daughter knew she was loved, protected, and never alone. Together, they made their way to their car, leaving behind a park that had witnessed not just a confrontation but a moment of transformation. That evening, as Alia sketched in her notebook, she drew an image of her and her father standing tall against a storm. Above them, she wrote in bold letters, "True strength is kindness." Marcus, looking over her shoulder, felt a surge of pride. Despite the day's challenges, he knew they had emerged stronger, their bond unshakable and their message clear for all to see. The park grew silent, as if the world itself held its breath. Marcus's words reverberated in the air, their weight undeniable. Even the distant chirping of birds seemed to pause, replaced by the quiet hum of people's murmurs. All eyes were on Ethan, his bravado now faltering under the unyielding gaze of Marcus and the silent strength radiating from Alia. Ethan stood there, his shoulders tense and his fists clenched. For a moment, his face flickered between anger and uncertainty. He opened his mouth to speak, but no words came. The crowd, now larger and more attentive, waited. Phones captured every second, preserving this moment of reckoning. Ethan's aggression had been met not with equal hostility, but with resolve and dignity, and he struggled to reconcile the shift in power. "Look around you," Marcus continued, his voice steady but charged with emotion. "These people aren't here to watch you tear someone down. They're here because they believe in what's right. Strength isn't about intimidation or fear. It's about lifting others up, protecting those who need it, and admitting when you've made a mistake." Ethan's gaze darted to the faces in the crowd. He saw judgment, yes, but also expectation. The bitterness that had fueled his actions began to wane, replaced by an unfamiliar sensation, shame. He'd come here seeking to release his frustrations, but instead, he found himself exposed. His actions laid bare before a community that rejected them. Marcus took a step closer, his presence commanding yet calm. "You owe her an apology," he said, his tone firm but not unkind. "Not just for what you said, but for what you tried to take from her. Her joy, her dignity, her right to be here. Those are things no one has the right to take away." Alia watched from her spot beneath the oak tree, her hands gripping the armrests of her wheelchair. Her father's words filled her with a mix of pride and awe. Despite the hurt she'd felt, she saw the power of his stand, the way his courage turned the tide of the situation. She straightened her posture, her youthful spirit refusing to be dimmed by the events of the morning. Ethan hesitated, his lips pressed into a thin line. The crowd's murmurs grew louder, a collective call for accountability. Finally, he lowered his gaze and muttered, "I'm sorry." His apology was barely audible, but it was there. It hung in the air, fragile yet significant. The crowd's whispers softened, and all eyes turned to Alia. She took a deep breath, her voice small but steady as she replied, "I forgive you." Her words were simple, yet they carried a weight that silenced the park. They weren't just words of forgiveness. They were an act of defiance against hate and a testament to her resilience. In forgiving Ethan, Alia reclaimed her power, refusing to let his cruelty define her day or her spirit. Ethan's face flushed, his shame deepening under the unwavering kindness of the young girl he'd wronged. He nodded, unable to meet her eyes, and walked away, his steps heavy with the burden of his actions. The crowd parted for him, their attention now fully on Marcus and Alia. As the tension eased, a ripple of applause broke out among the onlookers. It started with one person, then another, until the entire park resounded with clapping. The applause wasn't just for Marcus or Alia. It was a celebration of the values they embodied: strength, compassion, and the courage to stand up against injustice. Marcus knelt beside Alia, his hand gently resting on her shoulder. "You okay, sweetheart?" he asked, his voice soft and full of concern. She nodded, a small smile breaking through her earlier tears. "I'm okay, Daddy," she said. "Because of you." The two of them shared a quiet moment, the world around them fading into the background. The crowd slowly dispersed, conversations buzzing with admiration for what they had witnessed. Strangers approached Marcus to shake his hand, to commend his bravery, and to tell him how much his actions had inspired them. Alia received smiles and kind words, her presence now seen as a source of light rather than an inconvenience. In the days that followed, the story of Marcus and Alia spread beyond the park. Videos of the confrontation went viral, drawing attention to the importance of standing up against prejudice and embracing kindness. Marcus's words became a rallying cry for many, a reminder that change begins with individuals who refuse to stay silent in the face of wrongdoing. For Ethan, the moment marked a turning point. Though his apology had been reluctant, it planted a seed of self-reflection. He began to question the bitterness that had consumed him, seeking ways to address the pain he'd been carrying. Redemption wasn't immediate, but the incident at the park became a catalyst for his journey toward becoming a better person. For Marcus and Alia, the experience strengthened their bond and reinforced their belief in the power of courage and compassion. They knew the fight against prejudice was far from over, but they also knew that moments like these, moments of change, had the potential to transform hearts and inspire hope in even the darkest times. As the sun dipped below the horizon, casting a golden hue over the park, the events of the day began to sink in. Marcus carefully loaded Alia into their car, his heart heavy but resolute. Her wheelchair, once a vibrant symbol of her independence with its butterfly and star decals, was now damaged, a silent testament to the confrontation they had just endured. Marcus glanced at his daughter. Her usual sparkle dimmed yet unbroken, and felt a surge of determination to turn this moment into something meaningful. Back home, the house was quiet, save for the hum of the evening breeze filtering through the open windows. Alia sat at the kitchen table with a blank sheet of paper in front of her, colored pencils scattered about. It was her usual refuge, art, a way to process emotions too big for words. Slowly, she began to draw. First came the outline of two figures, one tall and strong, the other small but radiant. Around them swirled a tempest, with jagged lines representing the storm they had faced. Yet, the figures stood firm, their hands clasped, their expressions resolute. She titled the drawing "Against the Storm." Marcus watched her from the doorway, his chest tightening with pride and sorrow. "That's beautiful, sweetheart," he said, stepping forward. Alia looked up, her eyes glistening. "We're superheroes, Dad. We stand against the storm." Her words hit Marcus like a wave, washing away the day's bitterness and replacing it with hope. "That's right," he said, kneeling beside her. "And no storm is too big for us." The next day, Marcus took the broken wheelchair to a local repair shop. As he explained what had happened, the owner, a kind elderly man named Mr. Harris, listened intently. "You've got a brave little girl there," Mr. Harris said, his voice tinged with admiration. "I'll make sure this chair is as good as new, and then some." Word of the confrontation had spread through the community, thanks to the videos captured by bystanders. Social media was abuzz with discussions about Marcus and Alia's bravery, and offers of support poured in. A local artist reached out, inspired by Alia's drawing, and proposed creating a mural in the park, a tribute to resilience and kindness. Marcus hesitated at first, unsure if they wanted to revisit the scene of the incident, but Alia's excitement was contagious. "It'll show everyone that we can face anything," she said. The mural was unveiled a few weeks later, depicting Alia and Marcus as larger-than-life figures standing against a swirling storm, their faces illuminated with determination. Below the image were the words, "Courage is standing tall in the face of adversity." The community gathered for the unveiling, and Marcus gave a short speech, "This isn't just about us," he said. "It's about everyone who's ever faced prejudice, fear, or ignorance. Together, we can weather any storm." Alia's voice chimed in from his side. "And we can make the world a better place, one act of kindness at a time." In the weeks and months that followed, the incident became a catalyst for change in their community. Local schools started programs to educate children about inclusivity and empathy. The park instituted new initiatives to ensure accessibility and safety for all. Even Ethan, the man who had sparked the confrontation, reached out to Marcus and Alia. His apology was heartfelt this time, accompanied by a promise to do better. Marcus, ever the example of grace, accepted it, and Alia offered her forgiveness once more. For Marcus and Alia, life moved forward. The new wheelchair became a symbol of renewal, adorned once again with butterflies and stars. Alia continued to draw, her art now infused with themes of strength and unity. And Marcus, inspired by his daughter's resilience, became an advocate for disability rights, using their story to inspire others. Each evening, as they sat together reviewing the day, they would look at the mural's photo framed on their wall. It was a constant reminder of their journey, a story of courage, love, and the unbreakable bond between a father and daughter. For them, the storm wasn't just an obstacle. It was a moment that revealed their true strength. The moment Marcus stood tall, facing the bitterness of Ethan, was more than just a confrontation between two individuals. It was a symbolic battle between two mindsets, two ways of looking at the world. On one hand, you had Ethan, embodying all the negative energy that comes from ignorance, prejudice, and unhealed wounds. On the other, you had Marcus, a father driven by love, compassion, and an unwavering commitment to protect his daughter and, in the process, teach everyone around him a lesson. The scene that unfolded in that park wasn't just a clash of personalities. It was a powerful reminder of how we all have the ability to choose our responses to the challenges life throws at us. The key lesson here isn't just about confronting hate. It's about the power of standing firm in the face of injustice, even when it seems easier to walk away or avoid confrontation. It's about knowing that our words and actions have the potential to shift the atmosphere and alter the course of someone's life. At that moment, Marcus wasn't just defending his daughter, Alia. He was defending the fundamental rights of all human beings to exist in peace, to enjoy public spaces without fear of judgment or cruelty. The world is filled with people like Ethan, individuals whose actions are fueled by their own pain, frustrations, and biases. But the challenge for all of us is to not allow those forces to dictate how we respond. Instead of reacting with anger or frustration, Marcus chose to rise above. He chose to use his voice, not to escalate the situation, but to de-escalate it by showing Ethan and everyone around that real strength isn't found in power or dominance. True strength is in restraint, in compassion, and in standing up for what's right. It's a common misconception that strength is about physical prowess or the ability to overpower someone in a confrontation. But Marcus demonstrated something far more powerful: emotional intelligence. He didn't let Ethan's bitterness and hatred affect him. Instead, he stood firm in his beliefs, holding his ground with dignity and grace. This is where the true strength of a person lies, not in their ability to dominate, but in their ability to respond to hostility with kindness, to lift others up instead of tearing them down. One of the most profound moments in this entire interaction was when Alia, despite the hurtful words that had been thrown at her, was able to respond with forgiveness. "I forgive you," she said softly to Ethan. Those simple words held an incredible amount of power. Forgiveness isn't just about letting go of anger or resentment. It's about taking back control of your own emotional well-being. It's about deciding that the hate and bitterness of others will not dictate how you feel or how you live. It's a conscious choice to break the cycle of negativity, to choose peace instead of conflict. Alia, despite her young age, understood this concept better than most adults ever will. Her ability to forgive Ethan wasn't just an act of kindness. It was an act of personal liberation. By forgiving him, she freed herself from the emotional weight of his cruelty and, in the process, taught all of us a valuable lesson in emotional resilience. The crowd that gathered in the park wasn't just a passive audience to the events unfolding before them. they were part of the lesson too. They were witnessing, firsthand, the power of standing up to injustice. As the whispers grew louder and the camera started rolling, people began to reflect on their own actions. How often do we stand by when we see someone being mistreated? How often do we remain silent, even when we know what's happening isn't right? Marcus didn't give in to the temptation to ignore the situation or pretend it wasn't his problem. Instead, he took a stand, and in doing so, he inspired everyone watching to think about how they might respond in similar situations. The ripple effect of that moment was far-reaching. As Ethan's demeanor shifted from anger to shame, we could see that the power of words and actions could make even the most hardened individual question his beliefs. It wasn't about defeating him in the traditional sense. It was about challenging his perception, making him reconsider his attitudes and assumptions. Ethan, at that moment, was forced to confront his own behavior. And though it wasn't an immediate transformation, it was a beginning. That moment of humility, when he muttered, "I'm sorry," signaled the first crack in his armor. It wasn't just an apology, it was a recognition that maybe, just maybe, his assumptions about Alia and people like her were wrong. This moment serves as a reminder that everyone is capable of change, no matter how set in their ways they might seem. But it also teaches us that the road to change is often slow and painful. Redemption isn't immediate, it's a process. Ethan's apology, while important, wasn't the end of the story, it was the beginning. The true test will come in his actions following this moment. Will he continue to carry the same prejudices? Or will he allow this moment to change him for good? As the day came to a close and Marcus and Alia drove home, the weight of the experience settled on them both. The broken wheelchair was a painful reminder of the physical toll that prejudice can take, but it also represented a metaphorical challenge to overcome. Life, much like a wheelchair, can be fragile and easily broken, but the resilience of the human spirit can never be shattered as easily. Alia's drawing of her father and herself as superheroes standing against a storm wasn't just an artistic expression. It was a symbol of their shared strength, their refusal to be knocked down, no matter what the world threw at them. This story, in its essence, isn't just about one act of kindness in the face of hatred. It's a powerful metaphor for how we should all approach life. It's about recognizing that every day, we're faced with moments where we have the choice to rise above the challenges, to stand firm in our values, and to lead with compassion. The story of Marcus, Alia, and Ethan teaches us that standing up for others, even when it's uncomfortable or difficult, is one of the most courageous things we can do. It reminds us that kindness is never wasted, and that even small acts of bravery can make a world of difference. Ultimately, the lesson for all of us is this: the world can be a difficult, sometimes cruel place, but we all have the ability to shape it, to make it better. We do this not by being passive or by accepting the status quo, but by actively choosing to challenge hate, prejudice, and injustice wherever we find it. We do this by standing up for those who can't stand up for themselves, by being a voice for those who are silenced, and by showing up for each other with kindness, forgiveness, and strength. So, as you reflect on this story, ask yourself, how can I be a force for good? How can I use my strength to lift others up, to challenge ignorance, and to create a world that is more compassionate and inclusive? The answers lie in how we respond to the challenges we face, and, just like Marcus, we all have the ability to make a difference. This story of courage, compassion, and resilience is one that we should all carry with us, especially in a world where prejudice and ignorance often make their presence felt. Marcus and Alia's journey is not just a tale of one father's stand to protect his daughter, but a reminder that each of us has a role to play in creating a world that is kinder, more inclusive, and less divisive. If this story has resonated with you, if you've been moved by Marcus's unwavering defense of his daughter and the power of Alia's forgiveness, then let's do something with that feeling. Let's take the lessons we've learned here and apply them in our everyday lives. We can't change the world overnight, but by choosing to act with kindness, by standing up for those who are often marginalized, and by speaking out against injustice, we can create ripples of positive change that will be felt long after we're gone. It's easy to feel powerless in the face of adversity, especially when the challenges seem so vast and insurmountable. But the truth is, Real change starts with us, the individuals who choose to make a difference in their own corner of the world. Marcus's act of courage in that park didn't just impact Ethan, it affected everyone who witnessed it, and it can inspire countless others to do the same. So, I challenge you to think about the small ways you can make a difference. How can you stand up for someone who is being mistreated? How can you be a voice of support for those who may not have one? How can you make your community, both online and offline, a place where kindness and understanding reign supreme? It might be as simple as offering a word of encouragement to someone who seems to be struggling. It might mean taking a stand in a conversation where someone is being unfairly judged or ridiculed. Or it might involve advocating for policies that promote equality, fairness, and accessibility for all people. The possibilities are endless, and every action, no matter how small, can make an impact. One of the most powerful ways you can contribute to this movement is by spreading the message of this story. Share this video with your friends and family, whether it's through social media, email, or word of mouth. By sharing stories like Marcus and Alias, we help normalize the idea of standing up to prejudice and embracing diversity. We create a space where people can see that kindness, strength, and love are the traits that should define us, not hate, anger, or ignorance. If you haven't already, I encourage you to like, subscribe, and share this video. Your engagement not only helps spread this important message, but it also signals to others that you are committed to a world that values respect and empathy. By subscribing, you ensure that you stay connected with the content that seeks to challenge the status quo, provoke thought, and inspire change. But let's take it one step further. If this story has inspired you to take action in your own life, consider supporting the mission of spreading messages of compassion and justice. One of the most powerful ways to do that is through platforms like Patreon, where your support directly helps create content that brings attention to important issues and creates a lasting impact. By becoming a patron, you contribute to the ongoing work that seeks to uplift those who are often ignored or overlooked. You help amplify the voices of those who are speaking out against inequality and fighting for a better future for all. The lessons we learn from Marcus, Alia, and even Ethan are not confined to this single story. They echo through every moment we face in our own lives, every interaction we have with others. How we respond to the challenges before us shapes the world we live in. Marcus's decision to defend his daughter with strength and dignity didn't just stop with Ethan. It inspired everyone who witnessed it to think about their own actions and how they, too, could stand up against injustice. If you've learned something from this video, whether it's the importance of standing up for what's right, the power of forgiveness, or the strength that comes from choosing love over hate, then share that knowledge. Talk about it with your friends, your family, your colleagues. Start conversations about how we can all make the world a better place. Small changes in our daily lives, when added together, can create a wave of transformation that has the potential to ripple out and impact entire communities. Let's work together to break down the walls of division, to build bridges of understanding and compassion instead. Let's show the world that kindness, dignity, and respect can triumph over hatred and prejudice. As you reflect on the actions of Marcus and Alia, think about how you can embody those same qualities in your own life. Don't wait for someone else to take the first step. Be the change you want to see in the world. The journey doesn't end here. It's just beginning. Together, we can create a world where stories like this become more common, where we all stand up for what's right and refuse to let hate dictate our actions. Let's make that vision a reality, one step at a time. Thank you for watching. Thank you for listening. And thank you for being part of this movement.